Sarah Hatch, and today I'm going to be teaching you about shading and what all these pencils even mean. Okay, so maybe you're new to art and you want to learn why do they sell so many different pencils? Okay, I will go over that with you. 6B is your softest pencil. B is for soft. It actually stands for black, but it means soft. And when I say soft, it means that the lead in your pencil is so much softer that it lets more material onto your paper. And so our 6B pencil is going to be letting off a lot more than your B pencil. So it goes down 6, 4, 2, B. And then I've got something called a HB. Now that's like a middle range one. And so what that one does is it's hard and soft. And so it's a good one to use because it still gives you some material as you're putting it down. It looks pretty good. And then we get into our hard pencils, the H's. And I've only got one to show, the 2H, but they're better for doing your under drawings so that they're really nice and light, and they're not leaving as much lead on your paper. It's also important to use high quality pencils and high quality paper if you're doing a sketch that you really feel like is important and that you want it to be really nice. You also don't want any divots in your paper because those show up as you start sketching. It can be really frustrating if you're like in the middle of a portrait and you're like shading the skin and there's a imperfection in the paper that makes it show up in the sketch. Okay, so let me just show you real quick the differences. You can definitely tell the difference between a 6B and an HB. Even a 4B is a lot darker. These ones, they're a little harder to tell the difference between, to tell you the truth. And I really don't feel the need to have like 3 different pencils. I mean, these ones just came in this kit I bought, but you definitely want, if you're only gonna buy a few pencils, get yourself a 6B and then get one of these in the mid-range. And then look at the 2H. That one, it retains its sharpness so much more. And so you don't get the nice blend that you get with those ones. It's definitely not a shading pencil. It's a drafting pencil. And so you definitely don't want to try to shade too much with the 2H. All right, so now we're gonna go over shading techniques. All right, so I'm just gonna grab my 2B, just one of my mid-ranged ones. Okay, so some people, including me, like to shade using diagonal lines, as you see that I've done up above. And they'll shade a whole picture using cross-hatching, and they can show the difference between things as they do shading lines like this. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it does tend to show the lines more often, especially if you're using a harder pencil. And so often, if you're wanting to do like a portrait or something where you don't want it to show the lines, I'll use what's called the tiny circle method. That's not what it's called, but that's what I'm calling it. And where you're just shading using tiny little circular motions. It takes longer, and that's why I don't always do it, but if I'm wanting it to look really nice, I just make these tiny little circular motions. And you want to adjust your hand depending on what you're doing. And having your hand further back helps you have a looser shade. And then as you want to apply more pressure, you push your thumb down a little bit and you can darken your shading that way. So, oh, see, that's an imperfection in my paper like I talked about earlier. I don't know if you can see it, but my kids were playing on this paper earlier on like a different page, and so sometimes those impressions come through onto the page, which can be frustrating sometimes. Okay, so you can use the tiny little circles or cross-hatching, and sometimes I love the effect of the cross-hatching. And so you just gotta play around with what you want your picture to look like. Okay, so now I'm gonna teach about how light affects the objects that you're drawing. And to do that, we're gonna draw a sphere. Okay, when we're sketching, the things we want to keep in mind is where's the highlight? What is the midtone? Where's the reflected light? Where does the shadow cast? And what is the darkest shadow? It's called the core shadow. And so those are the things we want to keep in mind when we're drawing any object. So I'm going to switch it to time lapse, and I'm going to draw a sphere real quick, and then I'm going to talk about different aspects of this. Okay, so what I kept in mind while I was drawing was where my highlight was, which obviously is right there. That's the brightest white. And then the midtone is all of this area. And then the reflected light is light that's bouncing off the table and coming back up and shining right there. And then the cast shadow is right here. And the core shadow is right here. Okay? So I can't see, I guess it's so dark. But those are the things you keep in mind as you're sketching anything. And I actually just used my 4B the whole time. I just varied how hard or dark I was shading. So, I mean, you can switch up pencils and that might make it a little easier, but you can also do it with just one, but it's up to you. So next time, I'm gonna have my son join me and we're gonna draw something a little more fun than a sphere. Unless you like drawing spheres, that's cool. But we're going to be using our shading technique of the little circles, and we're going to be keeping in mind how the lighting plays onto it. So that should be fun next time. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our future videos, and I will see you later.